What would you do if your husband stopped loving you? Faked my own death. Not to escape, but to watch what my husband would do when he thought I was gone. What I discovered wasn't just betrayal. It was something far darker. Watch till the end. Because when I came back, I didn't return as his wife. I returned as the reminder he could never erase. My name is Emily. For 10 years I thought I had the perfect marriage. Daniel was charming, successful, and to the world we were the picture of happiness. But behind closed doors, love had quietly turned into routine. And routine had turned into neglect. He stopped noticing the small things, the way I dressed up for him, the dinners I cooked, even the tears I tried to hide. His eyes, once full of affection, now looked through me like I didn't exist. Then one night I overheard something that broke me completely. He was on the phone. Laughing, whispering. He called another woman my love. Froze. My heart didn't just break, it turned cold. I could have confronted him. I could have screamed, cried, begged for answers. But I didn't. I decided to disappear instead. Not because I was weak, but because I wanted to know the truth. I wanted to see what my absence really meant to him. I planned everything carefully. A car accident on a rainy night, an empty seatbelt, and a body never recovered. Everyone assumed I'd fallen off the bridge into the river. The police declared me missing, presumed dead. Daniel cried at my memorial. He said all the right words. I'll never forget her. She was my everything. But I could see it, the relief in his eyes. The burden had lifted. And that was the moment I knew. I had to watch what he'd do next. For 2 years I lived far away, using a new name, watching from a distance. Through friends, through social media, through everything that still connected me to my old life. And when I saw him, smiling in photos with her, the same woman he had whispered to that night, I made a promise. I would return. Not as the Emily he once ignored, but as someone he'd never forget. What I didn't know was that Daniel had secrets darker than betrayal. And my return would uncover more than I ever planned for. Strange. Watching your own life move on without you. Seeing people cry for a while then forget like you were never there. After I faked my death, I moved to a small coastal town under a new name, Anna Reed. My hair was shorter, darker, my voice quieter. Every day I learned how to disappear a little more. But every night I watched him. Daniel had moved into a new house within 6 months. The woman from the phone call, Sophie, had moved in soon after. Their pictures flooded social media. Beach vacations, candlelight dinners, birthdays. He looked happier than ever. And the same man who used to say he couldn't sleep without me. He slept just fine in someone else's arms. I won't lie. Part of me wanted to message him, just to see the look on his face. But another part, the colder part, whispered, wait, watch. Because revenge isn't about noise. It's about timing. Over the next 2 years, I gathered pieces of his new life. The company he started, the house he bought with my insurance money, the friends who pretended to miss me but were now calling Sophie family. Every lie he told started to make sense. He didn't just cheat, he planned this. He wanted me gone. Then, one evening I saw something that made my blood run cold. On a random post, Sophie wore a necklace, my necklace. The one Daniel gave me on our 5th anniversary. The one I had hidden in my jewelry box, before the accident. How did she have it? Daniel had been in my house after my death. That's when I realized. My story wasn't over. It had only just begun. I packed my things and returned to the city I once called home. No one recognized me. Time had changed everything, except the anger in my heart. I rented an apartment just 3 blocks from Daniel's new house. Every night, I watched their windows glow with laughter. Every morning I saw them leave together, holding hands like the perfect couple. But I wasn't there to cry anymore. I was there to make him pay. So I started small messages from unknown numbers, shadows near his car, things moving around in his office. Nothing big. Just enough to make him question his sanity. Because before I let him see me, I wanted him to fear the ghost he created. And when the fear finally began to show on his face, that's when I decided it was time. Time for Daniel to meet the woman he buried. You plan every detail of revenge, until the moment plans collide with truth, and the truth is heavier than you expected. By the time I decided to show myself, I had rehearsed the scene in my head 1,000 times. I pictured Daniel stumbling, apologies spilling from his lips. I pictured Sophie's face twisting into guilt. I pictured the satisfaction of watching the man who erased me finally understand what he'd lost. So I chose a night when the house was quiet, when rain made the streetlights smear like watercolor. I walked up the path wearing one of my old coats, a coat he used to touch when he thought I wasn't looking. My heart pounded, but this wasn't about nostalgia. This was a performance, and I would be flawless. I carried an envelope. Inside, a few of my things, a note written in a hand only he would recognize. I left it on the doormat, then stepped back into the shadows. I didn't intend to knock. I wanted him to find proof that I was back, not to watch him fall apart in front of me. But fate has a cruel sense of timing. The front door opened before I could get away. Daniel stood there, one foot out, the rain soaking his shirt. For a moment he didn't recognize me, or maybe he did and pretended not to. His eyes scanned me like a stranger, then landed on the envelope at his feet. "Daniel," I said. My voice was a whisper, but it was mine. For 2 years I had been a ghost. Now I wanted to be granite. He froze. Then anger flared. Not the raw hurt I had expected, but something sharper, practiced. "Who are you?" he demanded. I stepped forward and let the coat fall open so he could see the necklace I had worn the night I died. His face went white. Sophie appeared behind him, confusion and then horror crossing her features when she recognized me. "This is a joke," Sophie said, voice trembling. "What is this?" Daniel laughed, a thin, brittle sound. He said the words I had been waiting to hear. "Emily, you're not dead." The laugh should have been my victory, but it landed wrong. There was a coldness in his eyes now that I had never seen before. Something in him had changed, and it wasn't simply because he'd moved on. Before I could push past them, Daniel shut the door and locked it. Then he smiled in a way that made my skin crawl. "You should leave," he said. "You don't belong here." The rain blurred the world. I realized with a sick twist in my gut that whatever I had been planning, the slow, elegant unraveling of his life, might not be enough. Because Daniel didn't react like a man who had been caught in a lie. He reacted like a man who had been preparing for me. When the lock clicked, I understood. He had been waiting for me long before I returned. And what I was about to uncover inside that house would change everything I thought I knew. The moment I stepped inside Daniel's house again, I realized revenge wasn't going to be a single blow. It would be a slow excavation of everything he tried to bury. He locked the door against me that night, but I didn't leave empty-handed. I'd learned to be patient. When a neighbor's cat slipped the side gate the next afternoon, I slipped in behind it. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and fresh coffee, the kind of clean that pretends to hide stains. I moved through rooms I once arranged. Everything looked smaller, stranger. Their laughter in those photos didn't belong here. I told myself I only needed one thing. Proof. Proof that Daniel had wanted me gone. Proof that Sophie wasn't an innocent newcomer but part of a plan. Proof that would let me take the slow, precise revenge I'd already imagined. The kitchen drawer yielded a stack of receipts. Expensive dinners, flights, hotels. Mostly meaningless on their own, until I found a receipt from a private investigator. My hand went rigid. My heart hammered in a rhythm that felt like warning and victory at once. There were dates scribbled next to the invoice, dates that matched the nights I'd been followed, nights I'd thought I was careful. He had hired someone to make sure I never returned. Kept searching. In the study, behind a false row of books, was a slim metal case. Inside, photos of me, real, candid, taken when I thought I was alone. A file folder contained hospital forms, manipulated signatures, and an insurance transfer plan dated weeks before my accident. Someone had forged my consent. Someone had cleared the path. Then I found something worse. A small notebook with names and amounts, payments to a driver, payments to hospital staff, one large deposit into an anonymous account labeled simply, "Final." At the bottom, in Daniel's handwriting, was a line that made bile rise in my throat. "Keep it clean. No questions. For both of us." He hadn't just moved on. He had orchestrated my disappearance. He'd built a scaffolding of lies, payments, and false documents. Sophie wasn't a lover who stumbled into comfort. She was a partner in the arrangement, or at the very least, the beneficiary. The insurance money that bought their new house was meant to be ours. It was mine. I sat in the dim study and cried, not from grief but from a furious, hot clarity. The pain of being replaced was nothing compared to the cold calculation of a man who had planned my erasure. I had thought I'd been clever to fake my death. He had been cleverer. But cleverness can be documented. Paper doesn't forget. Paper doesn't feel guilt. Paper can be used against you. I took photos of every page, every receipt, every photograph with my camera. I copied the files to a tiny flash drive I kept hidden in my coat. And as I slipped out the back, the notebook burning like a promise in my hands, I made a new plan. One that would not only expose Daniel, but make sure everything he had built on my absence came crashing down. I had the proof now. What I did next would do more than ruin him. It would make him understand, truly and painfully, the cost of erasing someone. Revenge can be loud, headlines, sirens, courtroom doors, but the most satisfying kind often arrives in a quiet, unmistakable moment when the person who erased you realizes they're the one who's been erased. I didn't want a cheap spectacle. I wanted precision. The evidence I'd stolen from Daniel's study was more than ink on paper. It was a map of his betrayal. I copied everything to secure clouds, sent encrypted messages to investigative journalists, and, most importantly, delivered a duplicate flash drive to the attorney I'd paid under my alias, a woman who owed me nothing except a sharp sense of justice. The morning the stories broke, Daniel was at work, shaking hands, smiling for a board photo. By noon, his company inbox was full of subpoenas. By 2, an investigator stood at his office asking polite but pointed questions. By 4, his phone exploded with messages from banks, reporters, and anonymous numbers. The house that had felt invulnerable began to look like a stage set, walls without real weight. I watched all of it unfold from a table across the street, a steaming coffee in my hands. Sophie's face, when she read the first headline, crumpled like paper in a hand. Friends who'd once called me gone texted Daniel frantic apologies. Others simply disappeared. The neighbors who had smiled at their new life now avoided them like a smear that might spread. He called me. It was a voice that once comforted me, now frantic and small. "Emily," he said, breathless. "Please. This." His words trailed into the noise of sirens. I didn't answer. Instead, I let the law and public shame do what my hands could not. Legal teams moved faster than personal anger ever could. Investigators found forged signatures, unaccounted payments, phone records that matched the PI receipts I'd photographed. The more the authorities dug, the more the scaffolding I'd uncovered turned into a collapse. Daniel was indicted. The company suspended him. Sophie was questioned. Her naive act unraveled into a narrative she could not convincingly perform. When the officers came to the house a week later, I walked up the path with my head held steady. Daniel met me on the porch, flanked by men in suits and badges. There was no theater in my greeting, only the cold, unflinching calm of someone who had been patient. "You destroyed me," he said, as if that were a plea and a punishment all at once. "It was already broken," I answered. "You didn't destroy me. You exposed who you were." I handed him a copy of the notebook, the receipts, the photos. He took them like a man holding his own sentence. He begged. He begged for forgiveness, for a chance to explain, to undo. Watching him plead was small comfort. What mattered was the ledger of truth laid bare. The legal records, the headlines, the friends who abandoned him. When it was over, I didn't move back in. I didn't want what remained of his life. Revenge, I learned, was not about reclaiming the past. It was about reclaiming myself. I changed my name officially, closed accounts linked to what he had stolen, and walked away from the town that had been ours. He lost everything I'd once lost to him, not because I wanted to watch him suffer, but because I needed the world to remember that erasing someone leaves tracks. And in the quiet after, I finally asked the only question that mattered. Who am I now, when I'm not defined by the life someone tried to bury?